The interesting thing about it was that in the first screening that I had, at least 3 people came to me and said, my grandmother is exactly like that. And not one of them was Pakistani or Indian, or they were Scottish, or they were English, or they were, I think one of them was Spanish, and said, my grandmother is just like that. So there was something about performances in the film that was so real that people could recognize and see through the cultural idea of it. See, well, yes, they're Pakistani and then there's British. And ultimately, when performances are so real, you pass through the culture and they become people that you know.
Welcome to the SAG-AFTRA Foundation's The Business Program. I'm Jazz Tangcay, Senior Austen's Editor for Variety. Now, without further ado, it is my absolute pleasure to talk about What's Love Got to Do with It. And with us today, we have writer and producer Jemima Khan, director Shekhar Kapur, and casting directors Olivia and Lucy Bevan. Hello and welcome to you all.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Good to see you.
Good to see you all. Thank you so much for being here. Jemima, as writer, this is such a beautiful story. It is, I know there's a long journey that it took to get here, but take us back. Like, what inspired the story? Like, where did it begin for you?
Well, it was quite a personal journey in a way, because I spent my 20s living in Pakistan. I went there when I got married to a Pakistani man and went there when I was 20, and I lived there with his entire extended family, his father, his sisters, their husbands, their children, 26 family members in one house, all of whom had arranged marriages, and some of whom were in the process of having arranged marriages. And I left there when I was 30, having had some of my preconceptions around the idea of arranged marriages somewhat challenged by seeing some very successful arranged marriages, some actually quite romantic ones. And when I came back, I was 30, and a lot of my girlfriends were in relationships or thinking about who might, father their unborn children. And we did have a conversation. What would happen if we deferred to our parents and let them choose? Who might they choose if we took out, the blast of chemistry and the rom-com love? Who might they choose, and how might it look, and how might it work out? And that was the kind of seed of the idea.
I love that. And, bringing it to life, Shekhar, comes on board as a director. Shekhar, talk about getting this script from Jemima, or how you two managed to find one another.
I worked with Working Title before, Elizabeth, and they sent me the script. And I remember the first thing we did was we sat down, we got some actors, and we sat down, because for me, the first reading of the script was really important, because you listen and you find rhythms, and what rhythms are going right and what are going wrong, and the film starts forming in your head. And I remember that reading, and that's when I said, we could find things in this film, in this script. What I really liked was, of course, the story. It's fabulous. And what I found, that the script didn't make judgments. It left judgments to the audience. And that I was very aware of. It can't, and it doesn't form. I know that between me and everybody else, it's a rom-com. I didn't quite understand what a rom-com is. I don't think that films fall into genres. I mean, I hate to say, but would you call Elizabeth a historical? No, it isn't. It's contemporary. Everything is contemporary. And to me, it was about our modern day lives. And there was something such interesting about our modern day lives in the script. And I love the fact that the script didn't at the end of it say, okay, now they've met and they live happily ever after. To me, love always has been a sense of mystery, a sense of yearning, and a sense of longing. And the journey really starts when you find each other and say, okay, now let's go on a journey. So that's what's interesting about the film, is everybody asks me, then what happened? And that's what's amazing about, actually, it's a very Eastern way of storytelling. Western ways are very linear. They start and they stop and they say, okay, happily ever after or not. But this story actually is a very Eastern way of looking at stories. Is the fact that it's circular. It's like, now what? And it just leaves the question, well, now what? Now they've said, okay, here it is. And they've said, okay, let's go give it a big try. That's it. That's what I loved about this film. This idea that there's so many spaces in the film. And I know that it's like all those, the way Jemima wove in all those fairy tales and made them dark and used the fairy tale as a quite sometimes uncertain way, but it was constantly giving messages. Never quite telling you exactly what the message is, but constantly giving you messages that shored up the whole film in terms of messages here and there. And that was very exciting for me to go and make a film and comprehend a whole film like that.
Yeah. And, we've got Olivia and Lucy here too, who did such an incredible job for casting. Talk about the creative brief you get as casting directors and the conversations that you had with Jemima. And Jemima, talk about working with Lucy and Olivia to make this film work.
Well, Shekhar was obviously part. We all had the conversations together, and it was. To be honest, I didn't actually. I'm not sure how much of a brief I gave Lucy and Olivia. I think they basically came back and were like, this person, there were some people that were just absolute no-brainers for all of us. Like Emma Thompson. Studio Canal, that was their number one choice. And it was always going to, if she said yes, we weren't going to ever consider anybody else. And then there were people like, Lily was best friends with Shazad. So that gave them a kind of really nice natural chemistry. But really, like Olivia and Lucy know way more actors than I do. So I didn't really give a brief. I don't know. Did you, Shekhar?
Well, Lucy and I were constantly talking. I think that she used to suddenly say, oh my God, it's midnight and Shekhar's calling me again. It's not. So as a director, you're constantly talking to the casting director, but hey, Lucy, I probably never work with anybody again. But this is the first time I'm doing an interview like this where the casting director is there. So I really, really, really want to know how Lucy feels about it. I've never had this interview. Lucy,
I found this.
Over to you.
Well, I found this to be a really happily collaborative experience, wasn't it? With Shekhar and Jemima and Olivia and I, we all got on very well, I would say, and it was a very kind of safe space in which to kind of have ideas and it all starts with the script, going back to your sort of immediate question, Jazz, and I read the script and I thought it was so funny. And I really loved the character of Mo, Hasim Chowdhury's character, because he asks all these questions that I don't feel very able to ask. And that character, and I think Hasim Chowdhury was someone that Shekhar, you felt very strongly about, because he's a sort of huge face of kind of Pakistani kind of comedy in this country. So that was a really fun. That was really fun when he responded to it.
Oh, I'm going to interfere there. Like, hang on, I didn't even know who Hasim Chowdhury was. You
I reminded you.
That.
No, you did.
My kids.
I did know. I did know that he was the guy in the BA ads. But
Yes.
you know who convinced me, Jemima? It's your sons.
Yeah, it was my kids.
They're his favorite thing. I said, wait, I've got to discover this actor.
I know, that's exactly what happened. My kids said, why? It was quite late in the day, and they said, why haven't you got Hasim Chowdhury? And I was like, there wasn't really actually a part for him, because the original script, it was a woman, not a man. And they said, you've got to go and watch this show, People Just Do Nothing. And he's their favorite. My kids are British Pakistani. And so they were like, he's our favorite actor. He's so funny. And I only knew him like Shekhar from the BA ads. And so I went and watched that show. And then I, as he said, slipped into his DMs and asked him if he'd consider it, and then had to write something, had to change the part for him practically overnight in order to send out to him. And thank God he said yes, but I hadn't ever seen him acting in anything other than the BA ads either.
But do you remember the grief we got from the studio saying, you can't change it to a man? And then once I had seen him, I said, yeah, we'll change it to a man. We'll change it. We'll find it.
Yeah,
I think he's so great in the film at asking all those questions in the way that he does. I think only Hasim could have. I think he's excellent in it. But no, to answer your question, Jazz, it all kind of starts with the script. And then, as you say, Shekhar, just sort of endless kind of conversations about, your vision and, how we could best bring people to the table who could, fulfill it. But that read through really helped, didn't it, Shekhar? When we had a bunch of those people in the room that ended up actually in the film, we helped put together a group of people. Olivia, how many was it? Can you remember who ended up in the film when we did that first read through? Alice or Ewing?
Yeah,
it was so handsome.
Jeff Mercer.
Yeah, they were. You're talking about the first or the second one?
Good question. The second.
Yeah. The second one was where Emma was in the read-through.
Yeah, she was.
When Jemima, you came to me, the funniest thing was when I suddenly got up, and because everything that I was saying, Emma was saying, that's great. And I'm such a fanboy. And she was just nodding her head. And I said, Emma, please stop nodding your head, because it's really, I don't know how to operate anymore if you keep doing that. But no, that read-through, yes, almost everybody came through.
Yeah. Nanny John was hard, Olivia,
Sorry?
wasn't it? Nanny John was hard to find.
Well, Nanny John was kind of it was slightly impossible at the time because we were in the middle of COVID. So to try and cast an elderly actress was already difficult, wasn't it?
Because they had to be Zoom. They had to be able to understand Zoom. And she was hilarious with her son on the Zoom. Like just the getting on the Zoom itself meant that she was like right for Nanny John, wasn't it? Like it was, if I remember, it was a kind of technically agonizing, but also hilariously funny.
Then Nani Jan also, she kept, it's so funny, because she knew my earlier films, she kept telling me, Shekhar, why are you looking, I'm not as old as you're trying to make me look. I'm not that old, I'm younger. Put her on a wheelchair, and she was very funny. The interesting thing about it was, in the first screening that I had, at least 3 people came to me and said, my grandmother's exactly like that. And not one of them was Pakistani or Indian, or they were Scottish, or they were English, or they were, I think one of them was Spanish, and said, my grandmother's just like that. So there was something about performances in the film that was so real that people could recognize and see through the cultural idea of it. See, well, yes, they're Pakistani, and then there's British. Ultimately, when performances are so real, you pass through the culture and they become people that you know. And when that happens, that's when a film that really worked. That's what I think was the brilliant thing about this film, is that people see themselves, and it doesn't matter whether they're Chinese or Italian or something. And that was the whole thing about this cast. It was, they transcended. It was a sort of transcendence that I find is happening in the film. I didn't know it would happen. It just happened. Yeah. But there you are. So please go on. No, I want to know exactly how terrible this director is, sitting on the head of casting directors.
Well, there's so many issues. Go on, Jazz. No,
go ahead.
Because it was written about Pakistan. There was also the thing of like trying to, obviously, in terms of the authentic, they had to be authentic to make it work. But then we had Shekhar, we had that whole thing of like, can you cast an Indian person to play Pakistani? And then, how can you, all of that was, challenging and important to kind of get to the bottom of as well. But I think that we handled that.
I think
I was a bit thrown by that at the beginning, because I've never thought about this, Pakistani. And suddenly I was told, no, you has to be Pakistani. I said, okay, all right. It threw me a little bit, saying, and I have to tell you that when I've done the film, I look back and I look at all the actors in it, and I think I said it at stage, the dearth of talent that you found, the dearth of talent of Asian, and let's not say Indian or Pakistani origins, just say Asian talent. There's so many films that can be made on them. So many, and Jemima, I think that the Asian community has got to be thankful for you all the time in creating a script that actually allowed them to come forward and say, we're people, we're human beings, and we're just human beings, and we are crossing this culture. Look upon us as human. Otherwise, they're like, okay, they're not playing to a type. They're just being human. And there's so many of them now. I just realized that. It's just amazing.
I think the wider family were cast really well as well. Like quite often you have your amazing central characters, but actually within the family, Mim Sheikh, Iman, you know, the brother, the brother's wife, the other family members were, and I tell you who blew me away were the estranged sister and her husband.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And they're
Yes.
in the film. They're only in the film really momentarily, probably not more than a few minutes. And yet the heart of the film rests on how convincing their performances are.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I feel as though the husband, who barely had any lines to say, David, I mean, we barely even know his name because he's in it so fleetingly, is so profoundly moving and authentic in it that, and if he, you know what, if those secondary or tertiary characters had not been as strong, I don't think, even with Shekhar's magic at bringing kind of drama and authenticity and depth to his films, I think we would have failed, because they really they were exceptional, weren't they, Shekhar?
No, they were completely, and I'm going to throw it right back to casting. I mean, when we talked to you, how did you find these people? What goes on in your head? Because all you hear from is like a director in doubt, constantly in doubt. That's how we direct films. You know, we explore our own doubts. So how do you deal with that? How do you deal with a director's doubt?
I think,
Lucy, I don't know if you agree. I think both of us would say this is a pool of talent that I'm ashamed to say I really wasn't that familiar with. And I think so many of the actors that we were meeting all the time, and we're meeting most of them on Zoom because of the pandemic, the thing that we constantly were told is, you know, they're not getting seen for like romantic comedies or so much the subject matter as a Pakistani actor in England that you get seen for is the certain kind that we all know about. And it was just so exciting, creatively fulfilling to us to meet these actors that we'd never really properly explored in this genre before.
Yeah.
And I think that's absolutely right. And they were so thrilled to be given this opportunity and really, really wanted to be involved. And so I think that's absolutely right. They were really, really pleased and happy to audition. And to your point, Jemima, I think you're absolutely right that for me, casting a film, those parts are absolutely as important as your leads. There's no question, because without the fabric around it, the center stuff doesn't work unless that, you know, around the edge. I always think that films are made up by a whole lot of heads of department that think that their department is the most important one. And I know that the sound person thinks sound is the most important, and the cinematographer thinks that cinematography is the most important. But I absolutely, and I'm sure Olivia would agree too, firmly believe that the casting is the most important. And when I went recently to see the film with my sister and my boyfriend, Jemima, that scene absolutely floored me. When they come in with the baby, I literally was in bits. And obviously I know, you know, I know the scene and I know what's going to happen, but I find them incredibly moving too. And I'm so pleased that they delivered.
But even the secondary, or even some of the fleeting comedy actors. So, you know, the dates or
they were the most fun to cast though. The dates were the most fun, like White Spittle, that like those parts were the most fun to cast. That was like Olivia and I sitting there going, you know, it was like, basically it's all the favourite comedians that you've seen in Edinburgh, like not that long before.
My Edinburgh, it was kind of mine and Lucy's Edinburgh notebook, just going, who should we be so lucky to have come in for a day? And they all just had such fun.
And the pin.
They were amazing.
So good.
Commissioner, the ghastly commissioners.
Two poor guys, you keep them called ghastly commissioners. I mean, you know, we've seen them in real life, right?
Only because they're based on some real life ones that I actually know.
Yeah.
Do you remember you've gone this far without revealing who they're based on? Just yeah.
So I think it's really interesting because it is I feel like the real talent is in finding those characters that finish the film. It's all the ones around the leads, because often, like with the leads, you don't have that many choices. The studio go, these people are bankable, these are the people that we're gonna, you know, and by the way, we were lucky that we had incredible leads, but it's the rest of the cast that really also made the film work, I think, and that was down to Olivia and Lucy for sure.
Olivia,
Also,
who do you think was
let's
the,
say-
go on,
sorry.
Shekhar.
No, I was just going to say that you know what, everybody asks me, Shekhar, what's the difference between a truly great film? I'm just assuming we've made a truly great film, of course, but what's the difference between a truly great film? Well, it's just an ordinarily good film. And I said detail. It's just detail, 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 detail. And so when you look at the casting, it's just detail. It's detail, detail, finding detail in everything that you do. Everything.
Yeah.
All right, go on.
No, I love that. I also want to detail, Jemima, the script is incredible. Like the detail. I think there's that line in there right at the beginning where they're playing table tennis, and it's like, 6% of arranged marriages end in divorce, and then like the other stat, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is so great. But like, what kept you going? Because were there times when you're like, I just want to, is this ever going to happen? What kept you going? And then just how did the script evolve over the years? As you said, like the casting comes together. So you write, you change a male character, female character into a male character, or somebody else comes in, you're like, oh, I'm going to change this. Like, talk about that process.
Well, in the stages before, in the development stage, before Shekhar came aboard, it was kind of a long, an arduous process of kind of trial and error. And I was lucky that a very good friend of mine, who is also, he's a writer primarily, but also directs, Ol Parker, was very, very kind and read every draft and gave me notes and was incredibly generous with his time. And then, of course, I think I gave up loads of times, by the way. There were loads of times when I shelved it and thought, oh, well, never mind, get on with my day job. And then it's just something would happen and it would get resurrected. And then when Shekhar came aboard the project, then obviously I redrafted it a few times, and then every time there was a new actor attached, it was then redrafted again, and every time a new development person, and then the finances, everyone, there was a new draft for pretty much every single person who is involved, including cast. Cast would give their notes and I'd do another draft. So I think it was just redrafted and redrafted and redrafted and redrafted, and that makes it sound quite unoriginal, doesn't it? But anyway, that's how it was.
No, it makes it sound like incredibly hard work.
Yeah, that's how it works. But you know what? Okay, I'm going to ask you this question. It's not at all like an Ol Parker film. It's completely different. And I know you've said this quite a few times, and I know how much he helped you around it, but it's nothing like an Ol Parker film. Ol Parker's films are tight, neat, everything. This is the chaos that you brought to this film. That thought attracted me. Like, okay, uncertain. That was the great thing about something having uncertain. You allow the actors to breathe. You allow them to breathe, and then allow, through their breathing, the audience breathes. And that's why people come to this film and they say, oh, I see myself, I see somebody I know in that film. And that's because of the uncertainty of it all. And that actors love it. And of course, they'll always ask you, I don't understand this, Jemima, so what does it mean? And I don't know how you navigated that. My answer to all of that is, well, it means whatever. We just get on the set and we explore the meaning, right? That's it. But I left you to face that.
I think it's interesting that you saw chaos in it, and I'm going to take it as a compliment.
No, it's a big compliment. In fact, I've been telling everybody, and people have been asking me, so is there a sequel? And I said, yeah. I mean, the end was written to have a sequel, because where in a love story do we ever get this idea that, okay, now what do we do? Now we've kissed, and now what do we do? Okay, that's the next film. It's amazing. It's stunning. And where the unformed life of Jemima Khan became the unformed life of the characters. Lots of way to go.
No, I was just going to say, one of the things about the auditioning process I really remember is that auditioning on Zoom is challenging. It's something, obviously, in the pandemic, we all learned to do everything on Zoom, but actors are nervous. They're nervous to meet Shekhar, and sometimes Jemima too. And Shekhar, you would just ask them questions, nothing to do with the script, nothing to do with the character. You would just take them completely out of their nerves, and you really put people at their ease by doing that. It was a really fun, wasn't it, Olivia? It was a really fun auditioning experience. And you'd just talk about, you'd sort of talk about poetry or something completely not what they were in their fear about. And so I think we got the best out of people. You put them at their ease for sure doing that.
Yeah, because you got to get actors out of what they're prepared for, get them out of their preparation. And for actors to explore what lies, also to see how will they take direction, do they get confused by it? And what lies beyond preparation? Because I put myself this, I promise you, every day I come to set, I'm going to say, today people are going to find out I have the biggest con in the world. And I get there and say, now what's going to happen? Now I've panicked myself. But I know in that panic somewhere lies the true answers. So yeah, I do the same.
I like the audition you did with Shazar, the first one before the pandemic, when we met him face to face. Do you remember?
Yeah. Yes.
I remember.
In working title.
Do you remember? He was like, because I had never seen an audition done before. So I was just sitting in and watching. It was quite something. And you managed to extract from him some kind of deep, dark family secrets, which is why he was relating. You asked him about his first loves and his first crushes and about Pakistan and how, anyway, it was kind of interesting to watch because it changed how he read the scene.
Yeah, it did. We did the treehouse scene, didn't we?
I can't remember.
Yeah, we did. I remember it. Actually, didn't we do it? It was the second, the first and then the second treehouse scenes. Yeah, with him.
All the casting secrets are coming out and the stories. No, but this is really fascinating and educational for everybody that is tuning in. So Jemima, you're going to start working on the sequel, right?
You heard it here first.
Yes.
But
yes. Come on.
A working title. We'll let you know after our US release.
OG, apart from Nani Jan, what do you remember being the biggest? What was the biggest challenge? Do you think it was Nani Jan?
I don't know what you guys think. I think Maimouna was such an integral part of the film, and we really, really explored absolutely everyone we could in England. And, we found some really good people like Hannah Khalik Brown, but she played a smaller part. She was just playing too young. And then, someone like Sajal Ali is so prominent in Pakistan. So to get someone like her to audition is a big deal. And she just did such a beautiful audition.
Yeah, she did.
And I think she's so touching in the film.
Jemima, I and everybody here have to say that you've revived like the British rom-com is well and truly alive, thanks to What's Love Got to Do with It. So I'm just going to whiz around really quickly because I know Lucy has to go. Any last words of advice, whether it's casting, writing a script, directing, or just working together? Like, Olivia, let's start with you.
So many of these supporting actors would say keep going, like more and more opportunities are opening up for everybody, like keep going.
I'd say work with people that you really like and get on with if you can, because then it's fun as well as challenging.
Well, whatever, I think that my big job as a director always is allowing the actors to find themselves. I never tell them, because I'm such a bad actor, that I never tell them how to act, but I will just constantly, if I allow them themselves to find themselves, is the big challenge. And that's my job, is to make them trust themselves and create it. And that's what I do.
Jemima, take it home.
Unoriginally, I'm going to echo Olivia, because I think it's so easy when you see a finished film to underestimate how long some of the people in it or behind it have been working to get to that point. And it looks so glossy and fabulous at the end, but just, keeping on going and just keep working hard is really I do think it's boring and a cliche, but I think it's the key to success.
True. Absolutely. You don't see the hard work, and that's our job, is to make sure that the audience doesn't see the hard work. That it just flew, it just kind of flowed through, That's, Thank you. Thanks for the casting. Thank you. It was beautiful.
Incredible. No, thank you so much for joining us for SAG-AFTRA Foundation's The Business Program and for sharing this incredible journey and insight into your process. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in.